millions of records with top 5 hits in the UK and the US. I'm Jamie East, and OMD are today's Virgin Radio classic artists, and over the next hour, I'll be talking to Paul Humphreys and Andy McCluskey, who founded the band as teenagers 40 years ago. But before we get into their story, let's hear one of their biggest hits. This is another Virgin Radio classic artist, and we've got a special one for you today. I'm dead chuffed to welcome Paul and Andy from Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. How you doing, guys?
We're good, thank you very much.
We're here to talk about 40 by 40, which is not only 40 singles, but in 40 years, it's one of those kind of proper coffee table. If you can have coffee table box sets, I think we can.
Yeah, I think we can.
If we've just coined the phrase, it's got books, it's got everything. It's got like unreleased songs, sessions from the BBC.
I mean, the 40 singles in 40 years are great, but it's really about the other content in there that I think our fans will love. You know, there's all the Top of the Pops performances. There's Crush the movie for the documentary making the Crush album. Yeah. There is
Dazzle Ships from Hammersmith Odeon 1983. Never been heard before. The whole live concert.
Yeah. Were you guys quite meticulous about cataloguing stuff as you were doing?
No, terrible really. But fortunately, Universal. Well, it was Virgin then EMI and then Universal.
Yeah.
have kept everything in their archives.
Particularly in the early days, we used to work linear onto tape. We would write onto tape just weird things and then try and distill out of it melodies and vocals.
Right.
But sometimes, if we couldn't get something to work, there would be something else on the multi-track that might be on the record, on the album. That would get mixed, but then the whole thing would go into storage and we'd never get it back. So it sort of went into
your scrapbook.
Yeah. So we found all these
ideas leading to the other idea.
All these great little ideas that didn't quite make it, but it's nice to show people how we worked on things. I mean, there are about 8 or 9 actually complete songs as well.
Wow.
But I think people are going to love all the stuff in there. It's the deeper stuff that I think is.
It's always interesting to hear a songwriter's journey, especially to a massive song. You know what I mean? Let's rewind back and go right back to kind of like the early 70s, kind of punk and kind of all of that kind of stuff is happening. And you guys were quite intent on being the antithesis of kind of heavy rock music, weren't you, at the time?
Totally, yeah. Yeah.
So when synths first came along, I mean, can you remember the first time you saw a synth?
I mean, I was aware that synths existed because, like, there's people like Keith Emerson used to use it.
And it was the sort of thing like, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong had a rocket. Yeah. We can't afford one of those either. Yeah. It was like synthesizers were just completely beyond our reach.
Yeah. But hearing Kraftwerk on the radio, I think, hearing Radioactivity. Autobahn was the first thing I heard on the radio. The Autobahn single, and it was just this long kind of. I mean, how long was it? It was like ridiculously long for a single. But
it's not often you hear music that just sounds like nothing you've ever heard before.
No, and it was really the first day.
Yeah,
first day of the rest of my life, really, and for Andy. So.
And presumably that was it. It's like, right, I've got to get me one of those.
Yeah, that's the future.
Well, we wanted to emulate it, but we couldn't afford to. So we started out on our journey with my bass guitar that was the only one I could afford in the second-hand shop because it was left-handed, so I learnt to play upside down.
Oh, my goodness.
Paul didn't have anything other than his cannibalised auntie's radios, which he cobbled the circuit boards together to just make noises, and then we put them through fuzz boxes and echo machines that we borrowed. And it was the first 6-9 months were just really ambient, because that's all we had. We were just making noises. And then we finally bought a cheap electric piano and a cheap organ. That's when we started to actually... He started to learn to play writing songs.
This is Virgin Radio Classic Artists. Today talking to Paul Humphreys and Andy McCluskey from OMD. Hello, I'm Jamie East. More from them soon, but before that, let's hear their first UK hit, Messages. The song is nearly 40 years old. Blimey, Messages by OMD there. Hello, I'm Jamie East with Virgin Radio Classic Artists, chatting to Paul Humphreys and Andy McCluskey from the band. What was the scene like back then? Presumably you weren't on your own in this kind of in this quest for.
Well, we thought we were. Because this was before the internet. So we had no idea what was going on around the country, really. And our first discovery, really, I think, was the normal that other people were listening to the same thing as us. Daniel Miller. We heard "Warm Leatherette" by Daniel Miller.
Punk opened up the doors to provincial clubs who would allow local artists to come and play and do their own thing. And so by the autumn of 78, we had been to Eric's club in Liverpool a lot, and we finally knocked on the door and said, could we do a gig on your Thursday night free for members audition night? just me and Paul and kind of doing our electronic music. And we thought they'd say no. They said, yeah, what are you called? We went, well, we haven't got a name, we'll get back to you on that one.
And the name was just written on your wall, wasn't it?
It was written on Andy's wall, yeah. We had a couple of hours to decide what we were going to be called. And so we rushed around to Andy's house, and he used to write potential song titles on his wall, as one does.
What came first? Was it your first hit, or was it Factory Records?
What was remarkable was the speed with which things transformed our lives. Yeah. We were daring to do one gig. That's why Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark didn't really matter. I mean, it's a ridiculous name. We're stuck with it now for 40 years, but it was for one gig. We were just going to dare to go on stage and not let our mates play guitar and drums all over our electro ideas. We were just going to do it our way. And we had a mate who had a tape recorder and a garage, and we said, can we do a backing track? And so we went and did this one gig, and amazingly, the people at Eric said, oh, we quite like what you did. You're on with a guy who's on Factory Records. They've got, or he's from Factory. Do you want to go and play at a club in Manchester called Factory? Yeah. So we went, all right, well, we'll do 2 gigs. We went to Factory. That's where we met Tony Wilson. Yeah. And then
we handed him a cassette.
Gave him a cassette and said, can we get on Granada Reports? Because he was a local newsreader in Manchester. Yeah. He filed it in a shopping bag in his car with all the rest of the rejects, and it was only a few weeks later when his wife got in the car, went, what's this bag? And he went, the rejects. And she went, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, that sounds cool, what's that? Put it on and went, that's great, you should sign them. And he went, no, they played at the club, it's not my cup of tea. She said, no, really, that's a hit. And so we went, OK, dear, I'll sign them for you. That's how you get a 40-year career.
Wow. Thank you, Lindsay. We owe everything to Lindsay.
Right, let's play the first and only single that OMD recorded for Factory Records. This is Electricity. Crackling with electricity there. I'm Jamie East with Virgin Radio Classic Artists, talking to Paul and Andy from the band.
It was amazing to sort of do the Factory tour.
Yeah.
You know, we were touring around Britain with Joy Division and Certain Ratio. And it was an amazing experience.
What a pioneering tour that must have been.
Only recently, actually, I was talking to Peter Saville, who, of course, was the iconic sleeve designer for Factory. And he said, you were actually the only band that fit our original premise, which was we were going to be a development label to develop artists and then pass them to majors, get the money back and plough it back into developing. He said, you did exactly what we intended to do. You moved on. All the others stayed, and we never got rid of them. You know?
I think they made it too comfy.
Yeah, they made it too comfy. Exactly.
So, were you ready for success? Did it feel
terrifying?
We invented the band to do a one-off gig on October the 12th, 78. Then we played. Then before Christmas, Tony offers us to do a record on Factory. It comes out in May 79. It lands on the desk of somebody who just happened to have been given a new record company by Richard Branson because as a thank you for signing Sting to Virgin Publishing. And she hears it and phones up and goes, have you got any more gigs? I went, no, we haven't actually, no Factory. So can I come and hear you? And so she came up and sat on the sofa in Paul's mum's back room where we used to write all the songs. We played our entire set of 7 songs.
Private gig for her. You know?
And she just went, oh, that's great. And she went away and we went, well, that'll be the last we see of her. 2 weeks later, we're playing in Blackpool with Joy Division. She's stuck in holiday traffic. It's a Friday night. She arrives as we're loading it. She goes, I've missed you. Oh, well, here, read this on the way home. So we throw everything in the van. I'm in the front. He's in the back holding the equipment together.
Take turns holding the gear.
And, flip the visor down and go, right, what's this? Oh, it's a 7-album deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was what, 7 months after we did our first gig that was supposed to be a one-off.
Which was insane.
As with a lot of bands of that time where you had these really amazingly uplifting kind of pop melodies, like Enola Gay, for instance. But actually, you get everyone kind of like, da, 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 da. And then when they sit down and read the lyrics, they go, oh, hang on a sec, that's about the bombing of Hiroshima. That must be quite... It almost feels like you're sneaking it in there.
It wasn't intentionally surreptitious of us. I mean, literally, we would work things up, as Paul said, from audio experiments and then hope we would distill a melody or a lyric out of it. Because we like experiments, but we don't like them for their own sake. They have to go somewhere musical.
Yeah.
Because it has to be worth listening to again. But yeah, Enola Gay was just... I mean, people did actually in a critical way, say, how can you do that? How can you write such a jolly song about such an awful...
Such a dark subject.
And I mean, it just turned out that way. I think this is the whole thing about our entire career. Certainly in the early days, there was no plan. There was no kind of like, oh, this is going to be the route to be the next big thing. I mean, being a two-piece with a tape recorder playing songs that your mate thinks are in a punk club called Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark was not exactly a...
You're just asking for a kicking, weren't you?
It wasn't an obvious plan for world domination.
It wasn't the recipe for that.
Hello, it's another Virgin Radio Classic Enola Gay by OMD, who are today's Virgin Radio Classic artist. Hello, I'm Jamie East, and I'm chatting to Paul and Andy from the band about their incredible 40-year career.
We did it our way. I mean, this was the amazing. Yeah. They gave us a load of money, and normally you go into a studio and spend it all, and you got a couple of reels of tape. We thought, nobody's going to buy this album, so let's build our own studio.
With the money from
when
the
we
advance.
get dropped, then we've got a studio.
Then we've got a business.
That's classic working class mentality, isn't it? It's
Well, it is.
buy, don't rent.
Yeah, budget for failure. You know.
Yeah,
And
budget
so,
for failure, so you've got something.
And the incredible thing is, they gave these three kids, us and our manager, £30,000 to go and build a studio and record an album, and that's why it sounds like garage punk, because it basically was.
Yeah.
In those days, 30 grand was a lot of money.
Nobody came to listen to it. Nobody A&R'd it. We delivered it. And the third single, which admittedly we did record because we realised it was a bit, was a hit. And then the next time we go back to our studio, we do our thing, and then we phone up and say, right, we're going into this studio. And the third album, we were left to our own devices. Nobody told us what to do.
How does your process work when you're writing songs? You say you experiment, but surely there's times where, say, you lead one or you lead another. I'm guessing that the slightly more, I guess, the poppy top lines come from you, Andy. And no,
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
No, they come from various places. What we like to do is we like to start with something, an abstract idea, a sound, maybe a lyric, crazy title of a song or something like that, or just some sound, found sound. We've heard some music concrete or something like that, and we need something, and one of us will just shove it in the room, and then we'll just bat it around until we've made something out of it.
Give me an idea of how we make things, right? Souvenir. If you think of Souvenir, you will remember the beautiful, beautiful melody.
Yeah.
That started out with Paul helping a friend copy some tape loops of a choir warming up.
Yeah.
So
Choir
Souvenir
warming up,
started with these tape loops, and then the melody and the vocal was distilled out of it.
Wow.
Same with Joan of Arc. I just laid down 5 minutes of me singing just going, through an echo, and then just randomly doing A major, playing on a glockenspiel. Then that was the bed track. Then I went, now I've got a feeling I'm going to try and make a song out of it. So it always starts from the bottom up.
Right.
It never starts with the tune down.
Right. Oh, okay. That's
Quite often
interesting.
the melody is the very last thing we put on
Right.
it, because we'll have done this track, and at the very end, that's when you can kind of distill out the melody out of all the harmonics of the things you've done, and you can get the kind of ultimate melody for the song.
Joan of Arc from OMD's third album, Architecture and Morality. Hello, I'm Jamie East, and this is Virgin Radio Classic Artist with Paul and Andy from OMD. One of my first introductions to you guys was I think, probably Sailing on the Seven Seas. And
that's when I'd gone.
Then you'd gone. So to take me through that kind of era. So Andy, you ended up being the kind of you were manning the ship.
Yeah, he was manning the OMD show.
We just got exhausted and worn down by the whole thing. So by the end of the 80s, we were struggling. We had different people pulling us apart, different ideas pulling in different directions.
Divisive elements around us, which didn't help.
No.
We got together. We'd been writing separately. We got together and we listened to the stuff, and briefly we went, okay, well, this sounds like two different bands. Well, you have one side and I'll have the other, and went, let's not be stupid. That's ridiculous. So we stopped.
Yeah.
And then various reasons, we won't go into them, I decided to carry on. It was terrifying because the only person I'd ever made music with since I was 16 was Paul.
Yeah.
So I felt really anxious, really nervous. The Sugar Tax album that came out in 91 doesn't even mention my name anywhere. I'm kind of like hiding behind the corporate logo of Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. And Sailing on the Seven Seas was released, and it was terrifying because it didn't chart well. and it just crawled up the charts.
I was DJing in a Derby nightclub through that period, and it was a proper. It was a grower, not a shower, and it became impossible to dance to in a nightclub. But it became just such a massive tune. That, I mean, must have been a bit of a relief to you.
Oh, well, it was, because, you know, I mean, we'd had to go through all this legal thing about separating and the value of the name and blah, blah, blah.
It was like a divorce, really.
Yeah. I mean, what was
thing together.
What was really funny was, I mean, we're too nice to really fall out.
Yeah.
It was a bit painful, but we didn't. I had to go round to Paul's house for some reason to talk to him about, I think the band was going to tour and I didn't have the sounds for some songs. And so I came round and he went, yeah, here you go. And as I was leaving, he went, oh, congratulations on Seven Seas getting to number 3. I'm glad it didn't get any higher because Souvenir got to number 3. So there was parity.
He gave it with one hand. What was that like for you, though, Paul?
I was very, I mean, to be honest,
don't lie.
It was really horribly weird to have OMD out there. This is, you know, we created this baby ourselves, both of us, and for it to be out there without me being part of it was
weird.
Was difficult and weird.
It was weird for him, and weird for me, because
But I was happy that he had a hit, because it meant that, you know, he was keeping the
legacy
going.
Yeah.
D
talking loud and clear. This is Virgin Radio Classic Artists. I'm Jamie East, talking to Paul and Andy from the band about their 40-year career. The duo split in the early 90s, but then got back together at the end of the noughties and are still going strong. When did you first start winking at each other across the bar again?
Well, the thing was that, you know, when you got into the 90s, electronic music, apart from the sort of the dance side of things, which kept on going, electronic pop really was dead. It was consigned to the decade before, because, you know, grunge had taken over, and you know, Britpop and all of that. So
what we hadn't realised was the 90s signalled the beginning of postmodernism in music, and because it became everywhere. But we didn't realise it. We were like,
notice at the time.
Hang on, we were trying to kill guitars. How come they're the future again? What happened to this one?
Well, it's music cyclic, isn't it? And it's like
popular culture started to eat its own history.
Yeah.
But we didn't realise it. So I stopped in 96 because I felt I was banging my head against a brick wall. Although Paul had actually co-written something with me on the album that came out, the Universal album. So we were back friendly talking. And then for the next few years, you know, people started to talk about electronic music, and synth pop was getting back in the charts. And we started getting
the millennium. Yeah, phones started ringing, you know, wanting us to get back together and do things, maybe do a concert. But it was never quite the right time. Andy was doing his projects, I was doing mine. Yeah. And it got to sort of 2005. You know, the phone was starting to ring a lot more by the time 2005. And he gets a call from a German TV station saying that
Germany started calling you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Because of Germany, we got back together. Because
Germans have had a lot of influence on us.
Because the Maid of Orleans was the biggest song in 1982, and they were doing this TV show with the biggest hits over that decade or whatever it was, and they wanted us to perform it. Up to that point, we'd always said no to things that came up. But he phones me up and said, "Do you fancy a jolly to Cologne? You know, spend a week in a 5-star hotel, we'll have some fun, you know, and we'll get a chance to see each other. We haven't seen each other for ages." So we said, yeah, okay. And when we just had this weekend together, you know, we worked for 4 minutes on the Saturday and another 4 minutes on the Sunday.
Brilliant.
And we thought, this is fun, isn't it? Yeah. Should we just do this again?
So that was when it started up again.
Yeah.
It's Virgin Radio Classic Artists today with Paul and Andy from OMD. Hello, I'm Jamie East. There's more from them soon, but let's hear a song that was a big hit for them both here and in the States, and in my opinion, a bit of a forgotten gem. Forever Live and Die. Click and what goes around does generally come around, and you can't hold a good track down regardless. You know, like you say, something like Enola Gay, it could be played, and I'm sure has been played many times. I was watching a video of yours where you're playing it with the full orchestra at last night at the Proms, and it just sounds glorious, you know. I would like to say, though, just being completely honest, I was getting a bit annoyed in the 2000s that we were kind of getting forgotten as a band. There was a few electronic bands that were getting forgotten. When people look back at all the big bands of the 80s, it was always, Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, it was all those kind of culture club. The poster bands. Were the poster bands of and Wham, and everyone remembered them from the 80s. But we sold millions of records in the 80s and no one was talking about us. Yeah, and it was starting to annoy me, really. And so
But I wasn't sure if people would be interested. We weren't sure if people would be interested in us. So when we put some shows on sale, we only put 9 shows on sale in the UK, wondering if there was any interest. And those 9 shows turned into like 49 shows or something.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden we were back doing it again. But
And so what are you guys up to now? Obviously we've got 40 by 40 out.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that the band has now been back together in its second incarnation for longer than we were together the first.
Wow.
First time. So that is amazing. We started playing live again and it was fun. But it was noticeable that the vast majority of the audience were people who'd been there the first time.
Yeah.
After 2 years, we kind of sat down and looked at ourselves and said, is this it now? Are we a tribute band to ourselves?
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
there's
there is not.
nothing wrong with
But the reason why Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark existed, our kind of raison d'etre, was to do something new, write new music, and challenge ourselves to be inspired to do something more interesting than, Ooh Baby, I Love You, and the same old chords.
Yeah.
So we thought, do we dare to actually try to make new music?
Yeah.
We were like, if we're going to do it,
Gotta go
it's
all
going to
in.
be great.
Yeah.
And actually, the last 3 albums we've done have contemporized us. What we notice now is our audience age demographic is much bigger. People respond to the new tracks and the old tracks, and it seems to have made us more relevant. But you know what? That's just where we stand now. We're still going forward.
yeah,
Perfect.
there's a lot of energy left in this band.
I can tell. I can
a lot
tell.
of life left in it.
I can tell. Musical Viagra. Andy and Paul, thank you so much. Well, that's another Virgin Radio Classic Artists in the bag. Thank you very much to Paul and Andy from OMD for their time, and thank you lot for listening.